Today we're going to talk Chapter 5, Audience Analysis. Now, it's important to remember that after today's mini lesson, we'll be able to list techniques for analyzing a target audience. We'll be able to define and explain different types of audience analysis. We'll also be able to recognize the difference between beliefs, attitudes, and values. Now, it's important to note that the most powerful people in the room are the ones sitting in the audience. They're the listeners. So often people get nervous because the speaker seems to be the center of attention. But remember, it is the speaker's job to make sure that their message is clearly conveyed and that the audience is drawn into the speech. So you need to know your audience or know what they need so that you can better prepare your speech. Every time I deliver a lesson, I always think about my audience in mind, whether it is online, face-to-face, school, or personal. It's so important that you remember that your audience, they want to listen, they want to understand, but you've got to make that message or package that message in a way that keeps them engaged and helps them to understand. Now, listeners judge a speech based on what they know and what they believe. So a listener comes to a speaking situation with preconceived notions and ideas. It is your job as the speaker to relate that message to the audience. Remember, the speaking situation doesn't revolve around the speaker, it revolves around the audience. Now, good speakers are audience-centered. That means that the overall purpose of public speaking is to gain a desired response from the audience. How do you do that? By asking yourself these questions. To whom am I speaking? What do I want my audience to know, believe, or do as a result of my speech? And how can I effectively write and present my speech? If you ask yourself this question every time you give a speech, you're going to deliver some really powerful speeches. Now, in audience analysis, the beginning is to look at the demographics. You want to reflect on how demographics affect listening, but avoid stereotyping. And then you also want to consider the situation. So, what do I mean by demographics? Well, demographics are key information about your audience. This information includes age, gender, religion, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, and/or culture, and group membership. It also includes their occupation or job, their economic position, education they receive, place where they live, and many other factors as well. So going back here, which of the 6 that are listed here do you believe to be the most important? Now, all of these factors are important and may influence a person's perceptions. The most important is generally noted as the age. The age a person is ties them a lot to the culture, the history, the things that occurred at that time. So, for example, if you're like me, who went to school in the early 2000s, boy bands were huge. And if you want to relate to me talking about NSYNC or Backstreet Boys and which one's your favorite, you definitely could connect to me. Also, I like to use historical examples, like, for example, 9/11. If you are someone who was old enough to remember 9/11, you're going to have a very different understanding and interpretation of what happened and what that meant for our country. Now, if you're someone who was born after 9/11, you're going to have just a different perspective and there'll be a different value placed on that. Now, that's not right or wrong, but age does determine a lot of your shared experiences and how you relate to other people. Now, when it comes to demographics, being all people that are currently attending college and pursuing their education, there's a lot you can relate to college-age students or people who are experiencing college, whether they are working full-time as well and just taking some classes or full-time enrolled in classes. Now, there's different approaches to take with the audience analysis. Your text lists out 4 major ones, which is direct observation, inference, data sampling, and basic questionnaires. Direct observation is you getting to know your peers. It's what you see on a daily basis. If you are observing a workplace or a classroom, you can definitely see and note some things about your audience based on your shared experience. Inferring takes that direct observation just a step further. That's you drawing conclusions and really making claims or decisions based on those observations. Data sampling is another great way to understand an audience. In education, we often look at grades and test scores, so that's a way to gather data and to understand if our students are gaining the material. Basic questionnaires ask you to fill out different pieces of information. It could be organized categories, Likert type questions, but basic questionnaires can give you a lot of direct feedback and are really great to use if you've got a specific topic, especially a persuasive one, that you are noting. Now, effective audience analysis questionnaires are brief, they're very clear, they don't have ambiguous or confusing questions. They're very carefully planned to elicit the necessary information. And they use all three major types of questions. So free response, multiple choice, and the Likert. Now, there are different categories of audience analysis that your textbook talks about. There's 5 overall. So situational is considering the purpose and the setting of the speech. For example, sometimes I teach night classes, and the purpose of taking a night class is often because people work full time, and then the setting is late at night and people are tired. So having a good situational analysis or understanding of my students who are taking a night class is really important. Demographic analysis allows you to consider the demography of the characteristics of the people. What that means is you know everyone's age group, their gender that they identify with, perhaps even their religious background, their orientation, and other key characteristics. The last one on this side is a psychological analysis, which looks at attitudes, beliefs, and values. Values are at the core and the hardest to change. Beliefs are ideas that are accepted as true. Attitudes can change with the setting, so it's a way of thinking or feeling regarding something. And again, attitude is the broadest and can definitely shift very easily. Belief is something that's a little more held onto, and then the value is what's at a person's core, which is very challenging to change. Multicultural analysis looks at language, cognition, ethnocentricity, and communication styles. It's important to understand that different cultures have different beliefs about education, how they look at leaders, or how they look at bosses or teachers. And so it's really important to understand people's backgrounds and to be receptive to their communication styles. Some communication styles are very direct. I think about more of like an Italian style, which is a little bit more boisterous, a little more communicative, and definitely more direct, versus some Asian cultures tend to be more reserved, more group-oriented, and have a different modality or approach to communicating. So keeping this in mind and being open to all experiences is really powerful. The last type of analysis is interest analysis and knowledge analysis. This is a way to encourage willing participants to connect to the topic being discussed. Usually this is recruiting someone or having any sort of party in which you sell things. You're going to find people who are interested in coming to hear what you have to say. And so you want to really make sure that the more you can connect to the knowledge base of your audience, the stronger your speech will be. And that's it for audience analysis. Keep playing around and exploring different audiences. And remember, the most important people in the room is not the speaker, but rather it is the people in the audience.